Hello, this is a video about using Raynox's most powerful close-up lens, the MSN 505. I'm going to try and demonstrate this on a Panasonic G5 Micro Four Thirds camera with a Venus Optics KX800 twin flash with flash guns on bendy arms. It also has a focusing light, which I've put some expanded polystyrene around to try and avoid it causing undue highlights. The working distance of this lens is very short. It's 18 millimeters. And I'm going to focus on this bit of Velcro here, and that's no focusing. Now, the fact that the working distance is so short limits the angle at which I can use this. I can go vertically, as long as this doesn't get in the way, but I can't go horizontally because I can't get the camera far enough away when it's at a shallow angle, or I can't get it close enough rather when it's at a shallow angle because it needs to be, well, that close. I will be trying to use this on a wall, a low wall, assuming I can find some subjects there, which means I'll be shooting in that direction, but I'm still going to have to get within 18 millimeters of the wall. So we'll see how that goes. The magnification that this produces on this gear ranges from at minimum focal length of 45, the magnification is 1.5 to 1. At maximum focal length, maximum zoom, the magnification is around 6 to 1. Now those sizes that gives a size of about 10.5 millimeters for the maximum scene size and about 3 millimeters for the minimum scene size. So on full frame, these would be magnifications ranging from 3 to 1 to 12 to 1. Now, I can change the focal length of this lens by turning the zoom ring here, and I can go from full wide angle to full telephoto. I'll do that now. So that did it. It's a turn of less than 90 degrees on the barrel, more like 75 degrees, 80 degrees. And it's very easy to do. It's a fly-by-wire lens, and I can do it with one finger. This lens also has a lever here. The lens was designed for video work, which means I can change the focal length. Instead of turning this, I can use this little lever to go to increase and decrease the focal length, which, since I'm using a close-up lens, increases or decreases the magnification. So I can go from minimum magnification here, minimum magnification, to maximum magnification with a movement of that much. And I can do it also with that finger as well. So it's quite easy and quite flexible. One thing you might notice is that as I'm changing the focal length, there's no movement in the barrel. Now this is very useful for close-up lenses because a close-up lens has to be at a certain distance from the subject. And the more powerful the close-up lens is, the more accurate you have to be about what that distance is. And with this lens, there's virtually no latitude at all. The fact that this lens doesn't extend or contract when I change the focal length means that once I'm lined up on a subject, like I am here, I can go from minimum zoom to maximum zoom without moving the camera, which is very useful. Another thing is that I can change, as I change the magnification, I don't have to make any changes to the flash. Now I'm using manual flash here. This Venus Optics KX800 doesn't do through the lens metering for flash. It's purely manual. But it turns out that it's relatively easy to use. Were I using a prime lens or extension tubes or reversing the lens, then as the magnification increased, I would need to use additional flash power because the effective aperture decreases as the magnification increases when you're using a prime macro lens or extension tubes, bellows or reversed lens. With a close-up lens, the effective aperture doesn't change with magnification. So I'm going to set this camera to f22 and leave it there, and I will be using f22, whatever magnification I'm using. In contrast, if I was to use f22 on, let's say, an APS-C camera, where this would go to a magnification of about 7.5, then f22 would become something like f200 at full magnification, as opposed to at 2:1 it would be about f60. I think I got that right. So it's quite simple to use this setup, both from the point of view of the flash not being difficult to use, even manually, and not having to move the camera around a lot when you change magnification. I'm going to go out into the garden. It's night time now, and I'm going to try and take a video of what's happening on the LCD while I'm using this. This could be quite amusing. And I'm going to be using live view. This has got an articulated screen on it, and I always use live view on my cameras. And I shall be trying to take a picture, a video of what I'm seeing on here for you to see as things progress. We'll see how it goes.
Line it up. Goodness me, this is silly difficult. Ah, I was at too high magnification, that's why. Right, there he is. Ah, that's better. Okay. So, oh, off he goes. No, he's still there. What is going on there? It's very tempting to put a less powerful lens on to actually see what's happening. So I don't know whether it's predating on this slug here. they do. Is he? Oh, there he is. So I've got a little focus square, and I'm pointing that pretty much at its eye. It does seem to be busy with whatever it is it's up to. And there's the slug. So are these two. What's it got there? What's that? Anyway, there we go. That's a fairly big subject. Let's see what else we've got around the place. Turn my headlight on again. Right, I've got a minimum magnification, and again a woodlouse, yes, singular, is, oh, and now there he is, the expanded polystyrene around the focus light, so I want a bit more light coming in from the left, which means I have to turn up the right hand one. So there we go. Let's see if that. So magnification down to minimum. Can you see what's going on here? Possibly. Well, there he is, and oh, that's a bit better. There we go. It really would be better to have a bit of support for my hands, because the shaking is making this higher magnification stuff really a bit impractical. Let's back off a bit. I was going to bring a little Gorilla Pod out, but I forgot. Might go back and get it, I don't know. Anyway, that's going okay. Let's just have one more go at the higher magnification. It's only going to give us a tiny little slice anyway. I mean, this higher magnification is better. Oh, missed it. With, oh gosh, I've got his eyes in focus. Did you see that one? I think maybe you did. Oh, he's gone now. Frightened him off, I think. Not surprised. Okay. Turn my headlight on again. No, there's a woodlouse. Oh, a big spider. No, oh, this is I'm gonna have no chance with this one, because he's gonna move. He's not gonna let me close enough. I'm pretty sure about that. Let's have a laugh. Turn the magnification down to minimum and point the camera at him, and just hope he stays. Oh, come on, Flash, come back. Well, wow. Go in a bit. Huh. Go in a bit more. I believe this. Oh, yes. That was maximum zoom. Can you see this? Yeah, it's in the picture as well. God, this is astonishing. I wouldn't have thought I stood a chance. Wow. Oh, off he goes. Wow, I was privileged there to have him let me do that. And other people, but that's too difficult. What's that? Now, again, I don't know if you'll be able to see this. there's a little something making its way through the undergrowth. Now this is a bit tricky because one of the diffusers is bashed up against the wall at the moment, and oh, there he goes. Now, can I get a picture? Oh, what is it? I don't know. Oh, he's gone. Where did I see? Oh, there it is. There it is. There it is. So, minimum zoom. Again, it's quite. Oh, it's right in amongst the grass. Right. There he is. Who suddenly moves. It's hiding. Oh, he's gone out into the open there. So, well, not quite open, but can I find him? Really need something less powerful for this, because it suddenly flips. Where is he? Where are you? The thing is motionless at the moment and I can't find him. Oh. Boo this. Oh, this is silly. This is really silly. He's off again. Oh. Oh. See him jump. Don't know if you could see that. Anything small, I'd like a springtail, really. Oh, there's a centipede or a millipede. Again, it's a bit on the big side. I've got a finger on the wall to try and stabilise things a bit. So, oh, that's better. Yeah, that's better. Let's try zooming in a bit. Oh, what's that? Magnification back to minimum. Oh, the distance is right. Maybe I can get a slightly better angle on him too. Get him from the side. Oh, it might be her, I suppose, actually. Don't know. Where are the springtails then, eh? What's that? What is that? Okay, let's see. That's a more suitable sized subject. Put my hand underneath the camera and use my thumb to use the lever for magnification. Then zoom in a bit. Oh, there he is. Okay, let's go back a bit. Well, there we are. That was smaller. I wonder if I can get a side view. Probably run out of... Oh! God, there's a lot of reflections on it. I don't like that. Don't like that at all. Oh, that's horrible. Oh well. That's a diffuser issue, isn't it? Hate those reflections. I can see two springtails. Tricky. Let's see. I've got a leaf which is causing me a bit of aggravation. Right, there we go. And it's not focusing. Right. Okay. Not the best angle. Certainly not a good angle for you to see it. Let's try that again. There we go. And oh, he's moved. He's moved.
So, that was the edited highlights of a session in the garden at night with the MSN 505. I've been pondering about it since then during the day, and my thoughts have centred around two areas, usability and image quality. I find close-up lenses very usable in general. I like using them, and the MSN 505 was no different in that respect. I mean, it's more difficult to use because of the higher magnification, but the sort of benefits, or what I regard as benefits, of using close-up lenses, such as the effective aperture staying constant with magnification, being able to change magnification without moving the camera, using that to find the subject, then zoom in on the subject, being able to take environmental shots as well as more close-up shots of an animal without moving the camera. And the 505 was fine from that point of view, so I like it. In terms of image quality, I've put the images that were used in the video online. They're not brilliant quality, to be quite honest, but I'm quite hopeful. I've got some springtail images from a couple of earlier sessions that are probably as good as I've done before, better possibly. So I think this lens does have the capability of producing nice results, although if you looked solely at the images from last night, you might disagree with that. I may get better with practice as well, and there's also issues of post-processing and the diffusion I'm using. I have lots of trouble with highlights on objects, on subjects. I'm wondering if I'm getting more problem of these highlights with smaller subjects. Maybe that's my imagination. And I think it was probably quite clear from looking at last night's episode that I really ought to provide a bit of support for the camera rather than just trying to hold it unsupported, especially at the higher magnifications. It adds a bit too much of a random element into the focusing. By just letting it jiggle around too much. But that's to do with me, that's not to do with the lens. There are some issues specifically to do with the lens though. At the lowest magnification, there was on this rig a little bit of vignetting. It was very slight. That's not really an issue with the lens, except that, like the MSN 202, it does have a rather small diameter, and so it is, I think, probably more prone to vignetting than larger lenses. But that wasn't enough to be a concern particularly, and it goes away as you move away from the minimum magnification. There's a very small working distance. Well, at the higher magnifications, that probably comes with the territory. The thing is that you've still got this 18mm working distance when you're right out at 1.5 to 1, and that really is quite short. So I think I'd be more inclined to use the MSN 202 or even the Raynox 250 for subjects of a suitable size. There's a lot of, or a distinct tendency towards chromatic aberration with this lens. It shows up very clearly on a ruler test, and it isn't just academic. It does turn up in images, real world images. I've got springtail images, for example, at not terribly high magnification, where along one of the boundaries in particular with one of the species, one of the boundaries on the body tends to have a green line on it. The trouble with this CA is that Lightroom's CA removal setting doesn't touch it, and the pick your own color defringing in Lightroom may or may not help with it, depending on the image. So the CA, I think, is significant. It's not so bad that I wouldn't use the lens, but I think it could be quite annoying with some images if you've actually picked up a nice image and it was difficult to get and you've only got one copy of it, to find then that it's really got some chromatic aberration that you can't get rid of would be disappointing. The other thing that it's got is pretty severe pincushion distortion, and that can make an image look very odd. And this is easiest to see in a ruler test, where it's very obvious just how much of it there is, and it is a lot. And I'm not convinced that the distortion removal tool in Lightroom, the thing that bends it in the opposite direction, I'm not convinced that it gets rid of it completely. I'm showing an example on the video here of, first of all, what an image looks like with no correction, and this is at the shorter focal lengths, at the lower magnifications. This distortion doesn't arise, isn't apparent anyway, at the higher magnifications. And then we can look at what a, so say, corrected image looks like. And to me, the corners still look wrong. Now, it may be that I haven't chosen exactly the right amount of on the distortion setting, but I have experimented a bit with it, and I've got a feeling that there may inevitably be some residual distortion. I'm also showing a third version, which I think is overcorrected, and the corners look wrong, differently wrong. So I think the distortion is significant. Again, as to whether it's a complete spoiler, a don't use this lens type problem, I don't think so. But it is a limitation, and it's certainly a limitation I'd rather not have. Overall, my feeling is that for me this lens is going to fit quite nicely into my suite of lenses, although it may not get used very much. I think probably it would be, or will be, most used to me for small subjects, not close-ups of big subjects like a spider's eye or whatever. I'm not really into that sort of thing. But I think for things like globular springtails, barkflies and so on, it may be the tool for the job. Although I have to say that for the springtails that, like the one in the video, they're on the edge of what's practical, in the sense that they are too big for this lens. So it's really the smaller springtails and mites and so on, which I think would be probably, for me, the most appropriate subject. And one last thing, I was trying to track I don't know what it was. Someone's told me once what it was, because I've taken pictures of them once before. The sort of the shiny thing with a pointy, spiky nose and spiky legs, and I couldn't keep up with it. I think that was partly not having the muscle memory, having the control, being used to working at those sort of magnifications, although that wasn't a particularly high magnification, to be honest. But I do know that it is possible to work with subjects who are moving around, and not just on easy platforms. Like most of those pictures, apart from that one I was just talking about, most of those pictures from last night were on a very easy platform, a very plain wall to work against, and with subjects which were staying still for a remarkable length of time in some cases. But I do know it's possible. I'll put on the screen now 4 pictures from a springtail that was moving around pretty fast. It was as if it was going somewhere. It wasn't doing what they often do, which is to move around and stop, and then they'll suddenly rush off somewhere else and stop again and eat or whatever it is they're up to. This one was on a journey, I would have thought, from somewhere to somewhere else, and it wasn't hanging around, but I still managed to get several shots of it in motion. So, and that was with the 505. So I'm hopeful that I got more detail out of it than I have before with some springtails. I've got closer into some subjects, although that's not necessarily my type of thing. And I have managed some subjects in motion with it. So I'm hopeful that despite its very real limitations in terms of chromatic aberration and distortion and a rather short working distance, that it's going to be a lens that I use and that I enjoy using. Well, I hope so. So, that's it for now. Goodbye.